The book of Revelation, it's filled with some of the most powerful and, let's be honest, baffling imagery in all of Scripture. We're talking beasts, angels, cosmic battles. It's a lot. Today, we're going to zero in on one of its most mysterious figures, the woman on the waters from chapter 17. Now, according to our source, figuring out who she is isn't just a fun puzzle, it might just be the key to unlocking this entire prophecy.
Okay, let's dive right in.
So the vision kicks off with this, staggering announcement from an angel. You've got this incredibly powerful figure, described in some really shocking terms, who has influence over kings and really the whole world. It's a potent, mysterious start that just grabs you and makes you ask, what on earth is going on here? And that really is the million-dollar question for this entire explainer, isn't it? Who is she? Are we talking about a literal person, an empire, some kind of ideology? Well, the source material we're looking at today proposes a very specific, and I gotta say, maybe even surprising, historical identity for this woman.
All right, so let's not beat around the bush. Let's get right to the heart of it. The source material for this explainer jumps right in with its interpretation of who this figure is at the center of this incredible vision.
And boom, here's the core reveal. According to this interpretation, the Great Whore isn't Rome, and it's not some far-off future entity. It's first-century Jerusalem. Yep, the Great City, as it's later called in the book, the same city where Jesus was crucified. This symbol is meant to represent the city's leadership, which had fallen into a state of deep spiritual and political corruption.
Okay, so that brings us to the next piece of the puzzle from that very first verse. If she's Jerusalem, a city up in the hills of Judea, what in the world does it mean that she sitteth upon many waters? Well, believe it or not, the vision actually gives us the answer itself a few verses later. And this is what's so brilliant. The text just explains its own symbol. The waters aren't literal seas or rivers. They represent the vast, diverse populations of the Roman Empire. Our source points out that the Jewish people were scattered all throughout these different regions. So Jerusalem's influence, for better or worse, really did extend across these many waters of humanity. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Calling Jerusalem the holy city by a term like that, it feels incredibly harsh, almost blasphemous. But what's really fascinating here is that, according to our source, this wasn't some shocking new insult. It was actually part of a long-standing prophetic tradition. It's the natural question, right? To really get why John uses this kind of language in Revelation, we actually have to look back and see how other prophets talked about Jerusalem when it went off the rails. See, centuries before Revelation was even a thing, the prophet Isaiah used this exact same metaphor. He was heartbroken, crying out that the once faithful city had become a harlot, a powerful symbol for its spiritual unfaithfulness and its terrible injustice. So the key takeaway here is that John isn't just inventing something new to be shocking. He's tapping into a well-established theme from the prophets. The metaphor was this incredibly strong way to describe a people in a covenant with God being unfaithful to him, kind of like an unfaithful spouse. And it wasn't just Isaiah. The prophet Jeremiah uses it too, describing the nation's slide into idolatry as playing the harlot. So, when John's first-century audience heard this term applied to Jerusalem, they would have instantly recognized this pattern from their own scriptures. It would have hit home. Okay, so the vision keeps building from here. We've got an idea of the woman and the water she sits on, but now we need to unpack that second part of the accusation, the whole business about fornication with the kings of the earth and this wine that gets the world drunk. So, in this context, fornication isn't literal. The source material explains it as a symbol for these corrupting alliances. It's pointing to this centuries-long pattern of Israel's leadership making shady political and spiritual deals with foreign pagan nations, deals that ultimately led them away from their own laws and straight into idolatry. And our source gives us a list of the major world powers whose influence, bit by bit, corrupted the nation over time. You've got Assyria and Egypt, then the Babylonian exile, followed by the influence of Persia, Greece, and finally, in John's own day, the powerhouse of Rome. Each one of these alliances brought in foreign customs and foreign gods that watered down their spiritual purity. And that leads us to the final and I think most fascinating part of the verse. How did this internal corruption, this wine of fornication, spill out and end up intoxicating the inhabitants of the earth? Well, the source connects this directly to the words of Jesus himself. And here it is. Here's where the source material makes this really powerful connection. arguing that this verse from Matthew is the key. Jesus is calling out the religious leaders, the scribes and Pharisees, for their zealous but totally corrupt missionary work. Their teachings, that's the wine, were so twisted that they were making their new converts even more spiritually lost than they were. This, according to the source, is how the world was made drunk. So let's just do a quick recap of how our source interprets these first two verses. The great city, the great whore, is first century Jerusalem. The waters she's sitting on are all the different peoples of the Roman Empire. Her fornication is that long history of corrupting foreign alliances, and her wine is the intoxicating, deceptive religious teaching being spread by her unfaithful leadership. And putting all this together leaves us with a really big, crucial question to think about. If the powerful symbols in Revelation are this deeply rooted in the specific history of the first century, how does that change the way we read these prophecies today? It suggests that maybe the book's cosmic drama is grounded in a very real, very specific earthly conflict, and that to understand the future might be pointing to we first have to get a much, much clearer picture of the past.